when we were in high school, I took a week off. Started before high school, but every fall I'd take a week off from school and I'd go to camp with my dad. Hunting.
Yeah.
So our freshman year in high school, November was coming up. We were going to camp. Dad says, you better go into the office and talk to Mr. Cunningham. Tell him you're not going to be in school next week. And Frank Cunningham was the principal.
And it was a school named after him, the Cunningham Middle School.
Yep, grand old gentleman.
Yeah.
Just the nicest guy. But I didn't really know him. I was just a freshman. So I walked into the office Monday morning, and he was standing by the counter, and I said, Mr. Cunningham, I said, I'm not going to be in school next week. And he said, oh, why? And I said, I'm going hunting with my father. And he looked at me, his eyes like they were looking right through you. And it seemed like 10 minutes, but it was probably 10 seconds. And he said, boy, he said, I wish more fathers would do that.
That's,
Yeah.
That same day, the same part of that conversation was Mr. Cunningham said, he said, I'm jealous. He said, I used to go hunting. He said, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But he said, I love venison.
Yeah.
But I don't get it anymore. I said, don't you worry.
yeah.
So for the next 4 years,
He had venison.
he had venison and he had trout in the spring. I took a week off in the spring, too, to go fishing. And always brought him some trout and
You took care of them.
venison.
Yeah.
But he was a grand old gentleman.
Yeah.
You both served at the same time, right?
Oh, yeah, well, real close. I got married November 4th of 67, and December 4th of 67 I was saying I do because I was drafted.
Oh, my word.
Went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. In fact, when I went to Bangor, and then I shipped out of Bangor, I had my physical in Bangor. And they said, strip down to your shorts and turn around. And I stripped down my shorts and I turned around. And he said, next. And I said, where do I go next? No, we're all done with you. And I said, what you're looking for, a trigger finger on both ends, see if I can shoot 360 degrees. He said, go get your clothes on, you're all done. Well, I didn't know if I'd passed or failed. I mean, I didn't know what was wrong. I know I had a slight curvature of the spine, but maybe they saw that when I turned around.
Yeah.
No, that didn't happen. I got on a bus and went to Fort Bragg,
yeah.
North Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
And when I finished, during basic training, Operation Santa Claus come up. I hadn't even finished my basic training. They shipped me home back to Presque Isle for Christmas. And then when I got finished with that, I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia, same place. We weren't there at the same time, but it's the same duty. And I thought, I have a radio on my back, I'm going to be number one target. They'll shoot me, and then they'll shoot the lieutenant. And when we finished the school, I mean, everybody, there was only 2 orders that come down. You went to jump school or Vietnam. That was it. And I had no orders. There was 13 of us, no orders. And I thought, what the heck is going on with us? And that went on, for several weeks. Every day, orders coming down, I'd check, no orders. And I got a job just to kill time with a post locator. And I'd work during the day in the supply room, passing out stuff to new recruits coming to Fort Gordon. Every week, orders come down, no orders, none of us. That group of 13, I thought, boy, there's something's not going to be good here. This isn't going to end well. But it turned out, finally, my orders came down, or all of ours did. And I asked where I was going. Sergeant said, you're going to Vietnam just like everybody else. You're not special, are you? And I said, no, I'm not. I just don't know why it took so long to send me there. And I working in post, and I called my wife and told her I got my orders today. I'm going to Vietnam. I went over to post locator that night to try and figure out why our orders are different. I wasn't going to Vietnam. I going to the island of Matsu, Taiwan, Taipei, Taiwan. And that was an R&R center. Well, how did I get to go to an R&R center? No, get over there, and I was working at a communication center on Yamisan Dentai, and hadn't been there too awful long. And I mean, that was a good duty. You could bring your wife,
Yeah.
if you wanted to, and
Yeah.
have her live in Taipei. And we talked about it for a few weeks, and shortly after that,
She decided to stay home with the dog.
she stayed home with the dog. But the
Oh, that's-
colonel of the base, when I was in Taiwan, talked to me one day after being downtown. He asked me if I wanted to go to the island of Matsu, had an opening. I said, really, I'd just soon stay where I am. I'm thinking of bringing my wife over. And Eisenhower wouldn't send the 7th Fleet in to get people out of Matsu or Quemoy. Or why would I want to go? That's pretty close to mainline China. I mean, you're 7 miles. He said, well, I'm looking for volunteers. Well, there were 2 guys outside to volunteer. I shoot, this is great. He's got volunteers. I'm good. Didn't even finish reading my mail. The sergeant came back over and said, get packed up. You're going Keelung Harbor tonight. Get on a Chinese destroyer and you're going to the island of Matsu. And I said, well, what happened to the volunteers? He said, oh, the major didn't like them. No chance to notify the wife that I was leaving or anything else. I was just packed up. Keelung Harbor, just a Chinese village on the water, all kinds of old destroyers, old mothball fleet destroyers from the United States, Taiwan, or people were using in the military. And I was kind of nervous. I had a pink card written in Chinese, and that was supposed to tell me what ship I was getting on and where I was going, and I knew nothing. I finally saw this colonel walking by. I was kind of, I didn't want to miss the ship, but I couldn't ask questions. My interpreter brought me in a Jeep and dropped me off, waved his hand goodbye and got back in the Jeep and left me there, and I'm, just in a port.
Could have figured it out.
yeah.
I saw this American. I said, "Gee," I got to get some help here. So being green for military anyway, just fresh recruit, and I went over and I saluted to him and I told him, what was going on. And he said, well, son, he says, I'm going to tell you one thing. Don't ever salute me again. He said, I'm going to be your commanding officer. We're going to the island of Matsu, and I will get you on the right ship. Well, he reminded me a lot of my father, big man. He probably weighed 230 or so. But as it turned out, where we went, we had our own tennis court. We had our own outdoor theater that we never used because we had movies inside. We had our own houseboys. We had our lovely quarters.
Goodness.
And there was only 5 Americans on the island. And, the colonel liked to play tennis and he liked to play basketball. Well, I was the only person of the 5 that cared anything about sports, and I loved tennis.
Yeah.
We played tennis every day. We didn't play much basketball, a little too hot for that. But
Didn't you have a pet monkey over there?
yes, I had a pet monkey.
Chimpanzee or something?
No, it was
No way.
Yeah, it was a monkey. It was an old world monkey. It was one of the Chinese guys from the motor pool had a monkey for sale. $20 for it. Well, that's a lot of money. But I'd never owned a monkey, and I thought, well, and it's big. It's standing pretty tall. So I got this monkey, and I had a chain on it. We had a big embankment, all stone walls, and I had him way up above, and the left chain, he could down below. Well, he'd jump off that wall. He jumped off on the back of a Chinese guy that did our bedding, bit him right in the forehead.
My word.
And then one day that I had to go to Taipei for reinforcements of supplies, a communication guy said, I'll keep the monkey fed. And I said, okay. Monkey broke the chain. Colonel Carter was shooting pool with one of the Chinese guys. Monkey come inside the day room, jumped up on the pool table, started throwing balls.
Oh my God.
the colonel and the Chinese guy. Well, the monkeys ended up coming of the missing. In the Chinese calendar, the year of the monkey,
Yeah.
well, if Chinese eat the monkey, then that's good health.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they ate my monkey, of course.
Yeah.
Before that one, I had a German Shepherd that I fattened up, German police dog. And the motor pool gave me him. And one of the trips I went to Taipei to get supplies, he became in the missing because
Yeah. The year of the dog.
the month of November,
Yeah.
eating dog give them good health for the winter.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I come back, I found out my dog was gone.
Yeah.
And we were invited, our medic and I were invited to a dinner right in the compound. We had meat. Well, we have very little meat on here. This island doesn't have meat, but we had meat. We were eating some of it, and I went and reached for another grub, and here's a jawbone plate. And, my dog, when I was playing with him one time, hit him in the jaw, like playing with his head.
Yeah.
Well, it cracked a tooth.
Oh, my goodness.
So, in the story of the tooth, my dog hurt. He had a broken tooth. And the colonel said, "Well, get a medic." The colonel got me a dentist, Chinese dentist, come up and take that tooth out. In this jawbone, that jawbone was missing a tooth. So I knew exactly what we were having for meat that night.
Yeah. Rex.
Rex. Oh, jeez.
Rin Tin Tin. Oh, my goodness. What a story. So, did they protect, like, the educated and the... I know my father always talked about, he served during the Korean War. He got called up in the early 1950s, and the Korean War was going on hot and heavy at the time. And after he got out of basic training, he always talked that he didn't realize it at the time, but when they started stationing people, most people went to Korea to fight. But he said there was a few that didn't. And he said it didn't catch on at that moment, but later on he thought all the ones that didn't go to Korea were college graduates. He happened to be a college graduate. He always said that he believed that they kind of protected, and he wasn't proud of that. But that's just what the government did.
I don't think so.
No. Maybe he was misreading it. Maybe it was a coincidence.
When I was in the service, I mean, there was probably half the people in my company were college graduates, and most of them went to Vietnam.
Did they? Yeah, he always said that. He always said, he wasn't proud of it or anything, but he...
my father was an attorney, and they needed attorneys for the Judge Advocate General Corps. So he enlisted, went to OCS, and became an officer, and got assigned there.
Yeah. Dad ended up during the Korean War. He went to Germany, and he served, of course, it was post-World War II, and he had a great time. Yep. He traveled Europe. Train travel was cheap, and in his time off, he would go to Switzerland or Italy or
I served during the Vietnam conflict, and I went through. I wanted to fly, and I tried to enlist, but because I wore glasses at the time, I couldn't get into a flight program.
Yeah.
There was so many people wanting to get into flight programs that they would. Today, the glasses wouldn't stop you with my vision. Yeah. But back then it did, so I said, okay, I won't give you 4 years. I'll give you 2. If you want me, come get me. Yeah. And they did.
They came and got you.
And of course, then I didn't have any choice.
Yeah. James Arnez wanted to be a pilot, and Gunsmoke there, Matt Dillon, and he was too tall. He was 6'7", and they...
Really?
Yeah.
I never
James Arnez.
I didn't have any choice, so they sent me to a radio operative school.
Yeah.
On at Fort Dix, and I said, "This is cool. I really don't want to be running around the jungle of Vietnam with a freaking radio on my back, because that's the first target they look for."
Exactly.
I knew I would get halfway through the class and got called out into the company commander's office one day, and 5 of us, and 10 o'clock in the morning, he said, there's a radio teletype school starting down at Fort Gordon, Georgia. He said, you guys are the top 5 in this class. If you want to go to that, tell me now. And I didn't know anything about radio teletype. The only thing I did know about it was that it had to be in an air-conditioned environment.
Sign me up.
So,
Put my name down.
so went down to that and
Yeah.
went through 3 or 4 month course. And there was probably 200 people in that class.
Yeah.
And when we graduated, they took the first 5 names on the alphabetical list.
Back.
And mine was the first one, B. There was no A's. And they assigned us as permanent party at Fort Gordon. Everybody else went to Vietnam.
Yeah.
No way.
Within a month, the other 4 had gone to Vietnam. And they made me an instructor in the radio teletype school, and I stayed there the whole time.
No kidding.
Good for
Georgia
you.
came home 2 years later.
Yeah.
Wow.
Was your wife from the county?
Oh, yeah,
Was
she was
she-
from Robinson, Maine.
That's where you got married, down there in Robinson.
Yeah, there used to be a little church there. And
That night that Arthur got married, that was the night that I had my car stolen. They had the reception in Mars Hill at the...
You were there, obviously, then.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the reception was at the VFW in Mars Hill. Next morning, I woke up at the house in Pascal, and I was kind of hungry and feeling a little off
Right.
for the celebration.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I went out to get my Volkswagen to go over town and get some breakfast, and my car was gone. And I said, gosh, I must have left the key in it. And somebody came and took it. So I called the Pascal PD and reported my car stolen. And it wasn't 20 minutes later, this cruiser pulled into the driveway, and it was old Don Thompson. He was one of the old-time cops there in Pascal. And he said, you lost your car. I said, yeah, somebody took it, Don. Well, he said, what did you do last night? I said, well, I went to a wedding. Really? He said, where was that? On Robinson. Yep. He said, did they have a reception? I said, yeah, they did. Well, where was that? I said, it was at the VFW in Mars Hill. He says, well, I'm here to tell you that your Volkswagen is parked in front of the VFW in Mars Hill as we speak.
That was a good night.
And I had no idea. I had no idea until just a few years ago how I got home that night.
Yeah.
And I was up to Arthur's Camp at Squapan. We were ice fishing, and we were talking, reminiscing a little bit, talking about that. And I said, I wish I knew who took me home. And Arthur says, well, I know who took you home. You do? Yeah, he said it was Mary Johnson. And Mary Johnson was arguably the best-looking girl in our high school class.
So who knows what you did that night then,
And
Fred?
I said, I wish I could remember that.
Shoot, anything. Well, it can be anything you want it to be now.
that's right.
But anyway, Don says, it's a quiet morning. He said, I'm not real busy. If you want, he said, jump in the cruiser and I'll take you to Mars Hill and get your car.
It was a different time, wasn't it,
So
Fred?
he drove me down to
Yeah,
Mars
it
Hill and
was
I got my car and came
it
home.
was a different time and a different world back then. Yeah, things like that happened, and yeah, that is so funny. Yeah.
You guys, you remember your first time out together, hunting or fishing?
You know, we lived at Portage during the summer. The camps at Portage. We moved over when school was out, and when we were just kids. Arthur would come up and spend a week or so at a time with us.
Yeah.
We always were out fishing somewhere in a boat, in a canoe or something. Portage.
Fishing or frogging.
They turned me loose in a boat. First time, I think I was probably 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
You saw the picture of it there.
Yeah.
You were 6 or 7?
And
in that
after
picture?
that,
Yeah.
you know, I was in the boat all the time.
Yeah.
And
We had
Arthur
the-
come up, we were gone. We'd be gone all day up
Yeah.
Fish River, down
We had the
Down
exact
Fish
same
River.
boat, that square stern sponson.
old town.
That's what I was. That's what I was raised in.
Yep.
Paul is ridden in that boat.
Yeah,
I
great
vaguely-
boat, great boat.
Vaguely remember it.
Yeah, red and white.
that was
but it
little-
was a true sponson, square stern sponson, and my dad loved that boat.
Yep.
Yeah, he loved to fish in it. So or out of it.
Yeah, then we graduated to the canoe,
Yeah.
the boat.
Yeah.
My father always told me, he said, you can't go by yourself in the canoe until you can swim at least 50 yards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he had a horse set up in front of the camp, back and forth. It was 50 yards.
You were going to get that.
Pretty early on, I was
You-
able
you-
to swim
you made
50
it.
yards. And
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
go in the canoe now.
Yeah. And
I remember the first time I took a canoe by myself up Fish River to the falls.
yeah.
It was in the spring. And Dad said, we're going up this weekend. We're going to take 2 canoes. He said, you're going to follow me. You just go wherever I go. And I was pretty young, 8, 9 years old.
No kidding.
And I was a little nervous. Well, I said, I'm a little nervous from the high land and up. That's pretty rough water.
Yeah.
And he said, no problem. He said, if you want, he said, we'll stop at the high landing and leave your canoe there and you can get in with me and we'll go up to camp. It was another 3 miles. I said, okay. So we're going up the river and I'm following him. And he got to the high landing and never even slowed down, just kept it on going. I said, well, if I'm going to go to camp, I guess I'm going to have to follow him.
Trial by fire.
I've got no choice.
Trial by fire. Yeah. You were gonna do it.
And after that, you couldn't stop me.
No. No.
The day I was born, my father bought 2 20-foot Old Town Guides models canoes.
Yeah.
One for him, one for me.
Wow.
And I had them delivered to Presque Isle on a flat car.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the mine I had right up until 3 or 4 years ago. And
Yeah.
I gave it to Jason's boy, Jacob.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have it in Jason's basement in Ashland right now. They put new gunnels on it and get some work on it. And
Of course, mine was what you called a Tupperware canoe there,
Yeah.
Fred. Mine was a Tupperware canoe.
How long is that trip up Fish River
18 miles from Portage.
to
That's a good.
where your camp was?
Yep.
Wow. How long would it?
My camp was right at the foot of the falls.
Okay.
Going up, we always ran a 7.5 Evan on the canoe. And it would take, in the spring when the water was high, it would take about 3 to 3.5 hours to go up.
Wow.
Take 45 minutes to go back to Portage. Down up.
If it was me, Fred, and I was in that canoe in the springtime, I'd probably want to drag a streamer the entire way up there. It'd probably take me a lot longer. So
Well, we did that a lot.
Yeah.
We trolled a lot on it once the water started to drop a little
Yeah.
bit. But early on, the water's so high, there's no,
Right,
there
right.
was no
Yeah.
fishing.
yeah,
And we used to watch, go up the head of the lake at Portage. The ice was still in the lake.
yeah,
And we'd go up usually around the 18th of April, the river would open up.
yeah,
And you'd look across, and you'd see open water where the river came in. And as soon as we saw that, we'd load the canoes, take them up, put them on the ice,
Yeah.
drag them across the ice to the river, put in and go to camp.
yeah.
And that was usually around the 18th of April.
Wow. Okay.
And of course, a lot of years, there's still 3 or 4 feet of snow in the woods
Yeah, yeah.
that time of
Yeah.
year. But,
So you owned those 2 camps at that time. You owned the one up at the falls and one on Portage.
yeah, the story with those camps was that my grandfather, Christie, from Washington, was an avid fisherman, and he found his way to Portage in 1926 on a fishing trip.
Wow. Yeah.
And he fell in love with the lake.
Yeah.
And in 27, he built the camps at Portage.
Yeah.
And he would bring his family up and leave them there all summer. That's where my mother
Yeah.
practically grew up there from.
Yeah.
She was 10 years old when they built those camps. Well, then he got a trip into the Red River camps, and he ended up buying those. So how they would get there was that they would come up the river from Portage to the falls. And then there was an old tote road that went from the falls camp to the Red River
Right.
camps. It was called the Chapman Tote Road.
All right. Yeah.
And they kept a horse there at the falls all summer, an old hovel there. And they kept the horse out there, and he had
Yeah.
Okay, then they'd take a horse and a wagon, and they'd go from the falls across to. They'd tent out overnight there at the falls, and then take the horse and go to Red River. Well, after a year or two doing that, he got tired of sleeping in a tent, so he built the camp at the falls.
Right.
So he'd have a place in between.
There you go.
Okay.
An outpost.
So World War II ended, and Dad came home from the service, and grandfather was getting ready to retire, moved to Florida, and he tried to give the whole works to my father. And the only camp Dad really wanted was the one at the falls.
Right.
But he said, I'll agree to take the one at the falls and the camp's at Portage if you'll sell Red River. Because he was practicing law, and Pascal just starting out, do law practice, and he didn't have time to look after all this stuff, you know.
Take care of
Yeah,
yourself.
and it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
So they sold the Red River camps to Herschel Curry, who was grandfather's caretaker and guide, and
Yeah.
kept Portage and the falls.
When you started guiding there in '62, was that when you started guiding there?
Early 60s, yeah.
There was a road in there at that time.
Oh, yeah.
They had some. Now, one of the things that I was interested in, and I've got to live it somewhat, Fred, is the change in the forest, the road systems and stuff. So back in that time in '62, there wasn't a lot of roads everywhere, here and there, and
When I first went to Red River, I was probably 5 years old, and you couldn't drive in there then.
right,
They were building the road in from St. Croix
Yeah.
through the fish hatchery there.
exactly.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
call that the fish hatchery or Red River Road
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the road was in as far as Flint Brook, which was about 6 miles from camp.
Yeah.
And Herschel had an old cleat track, Oliver cleat track
Yeah.
tractor, with a wagon behind it and a couple of car seats on it, and he would bring that out to Flint Brook and
Yeah.
pick up the guests and take them in. And that's how I
Yeah.
first went in there. And then
Wow.
a few years after that, they got the road all the way into Buccaneer and then into the camp.
So when you hunted in there, Fred, did they? Let's say you were getting up in the morning to take your sports out hunting or whatever. Would you drive somewhere, or did you hunt right from camp, or did you hunt a long way from camp, or
Not a long ways.
Yeah.
That year that I guided that, I didn't guide a lot of hunters in there because I was in school.
Right.
But one year, I always took a week off in November
right?
and went to my camp hunting. And,
Yeah.
and Sleepy knew that, and he called me. He said, "Are you taking a week off this year?" And I said, "Yeah." Well, he said, "I'm hired up for guides." He said, "I got more people than I have guides. Is there any way you'd come in and help us out?" And I said, "Yep, sure.
Wow.
Glad to."
So he wasn't your father-in-law at that time.
No. Several years before that, there had been a big fire over on the south branch of Rocky Brook, which was a 5 or 6 mile drive from the camp.
Yep.
And that was going up, and that was right full of deer.
Yeah.
So that fall, I went in there, and he gave me this party of 5 people from Pennsylvania. 2 of them were pretty good hunters. The others 3 had never hunted and didn't dare go off the road. They didn't dare go in the woods.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I took them over to the South Branch. I had a place over there that I liked pretty well. And
Yeah.
long story short, Tuesday they had their 5 deer.
Yeah.
Head her down.
Yeah.
But they were a little skittish. You know, here's this high school kid going to guide us. They weren't too sure about the whole thing.
Yeah, I can understand that.
But,
Yeah. I think probably by Tuesday they were pretty happy with the results, and
the guides' wages then were $10 a day or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't much. But and they left on Wednesday, but they paid for the whole week
right.
camp. They paid me for the whole week for guiding, and they left me a $500 tip,
Holy smokes.
which was a lot of money in
It was a lot of money.
1962.
Yeah, for a high school kid and
Holy
stuff.
smokes.
Yeah, you're pretty well set for the winter,
right.
Fred. Oh my goodness.
That was 62?
It was 62 or 3.
Yeah.
I don't remember just which year it was. But
That was better than working in the potato field.
Oh yeah, I picked potatoes, so we all did. Yeah, so I was raised doing that at 7 years old, going out and picking potatoes for 25 to 35 cents a barrel.
and I did up until I got into high school.
Yeah.
And when Sleepy bought the camp, of course, I was in there all summer.
Yeah.
And then go back out to go to school. And then as soon as the potato harvest started, I gave up picking and I went back to Red River for
kidding.
3 weeks.
That's
Got
I don't
bird
blame
hunters and
I don't blame
fishermen.
you there. Picking potatoes was never something I
course.
enjoyed or whatever.
One of the attractions there was Sleepy's youngest daughter.
Exactly. Yeah, and that all worked out. Yeah. Was there wood harvesting going on up in that area at the time?
Oh, yes.
And would you? And it was totally different back then. It was probably select. They'd go in and cut pulpwood, four foot wood. Because I can remember as a kid going in where they were cutting pulp, and we would hunt in those areas.
And it was all spruce. I mean,
All spruce.
In those days, the mills didn't think they could use balsam fir.
Nope.
They wouldn't cut it. So they were taking these huge, beautiful, big spruce, 18 to 30 inches in diameter, and putting all in 4 foot wood and riding it down the river.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Would you hunt those areas? Yeah. Because I can remember as a kid, Dad that's what we did. We'd go in towards Square Lake there, and I can still remember the smell of going in there. But it wasn't like today. It wasn't all clear cut. There was rows of 4 foot pulp and stuff, and it was totally different. But one of the things I can remember is, as a kid, Dad always telling me, "Well, the deer like to come in here and feed off the tops of the trees and stuff." And
just to give you some reference, when I first went in there, and I was like 5 years old, there was not a deer in that country.
Yeah.
You could spend the whole summer there.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see a deer or a deer track, nothing. It was, and then they started cutting. And the minute they started cutting, the deer started coming in.
Absolutely.
Now they got feed and something to eat there. And within 10 years, I mean, the place was overrun with deer. That fall, we saw
same way
almost
as
100 deer.
same thing as the moose that happened in the
Absolutely.
70s and 80s. That moose population, I went from when I was a kid, you never or very seldom saw a moose, and then starting in the 70s, but in the 80s, it was ridiculous how many
was
moose.
primarily due to the spruce budworm.
Yeah. But when they started those large clear cuts, they produced perfect moose habitat. And the moose population, I mean, you could just, Paul lived that. He remembers going bird hunting and stuff, and all the moose we used to see and stuff. That's crazy.
And
Overpopulated.
when they first started with the moose hunt, it was pretty easy to shoot a moose. All you had to do was drive around and you see them with these clear cuts. Get out of the truck and shoot one.
Yeah.
First
Well,
morning.
it's a different story today.
It is.
You got to hunt them today.
You do. The population's gone down, and a lot of the clear cuts have grown up, and the
Clear
moose
cuts are all
are.
grown up. So you drive around, the moose are there, but you just don't see them.
Yeah. And they're a
gotta
little
get
more
out and work
skittish,
for 'em.
too, about, after, well, it's been 40 years now, over 40 years, we've had a moose season, and, they're not quite so apt to stand there in the middle of a clear cut and let you shoot at them. So,
Changes.
yeah.
Now, we were talking about harvesting. I think in one of the photos that you let me have, is there a picture of a tree harvester in one of them, or some sort of mechanized? And then in the back,
I
there
think
was
that was one of the first mechanical harvesters. That was a Beloit
okay.
tree harvester, and that was one the Great Northern had bought just to try out.
Yeah.
And they brought it up on 13 Range 8, which was owned primarily by the Pingrees, but the Great Northern owned a share of it. And they wanted to try it out so everybody would get a chance to see how it worked. And it was just down from the falls, on the Falls Road there. And they cut there for 2 or 3 winters with it. And what they were doing was just cutting strips.
Yeah.
Cut a strip, leave a strip, cut another one like 50 feet wide or so. And that made a pretty good place for deer hunting too.
Yeah. Yeah.
The regeneration in the
Yeah, I
streets.
was- I was
They had
surprised to
good
see-
food, and they had cover in between them.
Yeah.
Surprised to see something mechanized that
early-
long ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that early in the.
That
yeah.
would have been in probably 65,
No way.
66.
Yeah.
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 That machine never really caught on. I mean, they made improvements to the mechanical harvesters, which were much better than
Yeah.
the machine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there never was very many of those built. But
So one story that we didn't actually get there at Chandler Lake that I really liked was the story. It was what, wintertime? You were going in to clean the roofs of a couple camps when you're with your snow sled. And that was a great story.
first got that old skidoo, that first one I had, and of course there was no roads. There was an old tote road that went from Portage up to Fish River Falls.
Yeah.
That's where the old Woods telephone line went. And it was in March, or late February, March. It was a school vacation anyway, and there was that much snow, but it was a hard crust. So I decided I was in high school, and I'm going to take the sled and go to the falls, shovel the roof off. Of course, the river never froze there in front of the camp, so once I got up, I had to go up to Round Pond and cross on the ice on Round Pond and get on the other side and then come back down to the camp. So I told the folks I'll be gone 2 nights. And so I got to the falls and I shoveled the roof off, and it was only noontime. I said, I'll ride over the Red River. Of course, the old Chapman Tote Road's 11 miles. So I went over and rode around the Red River camps and decided, before I get back, I'm going to take a ride up to Bully Lake. Well, I got about halfway up the lake, and all of a sudden everything stopped. The engine was running, but the sled wouldn't go anywhere. I looked behind me, and the friggin' track was laid out with snow behind me. And at that time, that was the only sled in Aroostook County. The
Wow, that's
game
amazing.
wardens didn't even have them
Yeah.
yet. I said, well, this is good. I had an old pair of bare pair snowshoes tied to the side of it. And I put them on and snowshoed back to the Red River camps, which was about 3 miles.
Yeah.
Get into the guides camp, build a fire. And went down. They had a big root cellar down there that they used to leave food and stuff in. It wouldn't freeze. So I went in the root cellar and got something for supper. So next morning I got up and I snowshoed to the falls, which is 11 miles, and spent the night there. And the next day I got up, walked to Portage down, so it was 18 miles.
Jeez.
And nobody was looking for me. I told them I'd be gone 2 nights, and I was gone 2 nights.
Right. Yeah.
And I got back to Portage, and Dad said, where's the sled? I said, well, it's on the Bully Lake. If you want it, go get it. Anyway, the dealer was in Holton. It was Willie Lynn's machine shop down there.
Yeah.
It's now Freightliner, Maine, that big building
Yeah.
coming up for you out of Holton. So next morning I drove down to see Willie and got a track from him. Because in those days the tracks were made out of rubber and they'd wear out real fast.
Yeah.
A year or 2, and they were done. So I got down and got the track, and Willie said, well, we'd be glad to put it on for you. And I said, well, I'll tell you where it is, and you
Yeah.
tell me if you still want to put
Yeah,
it
if you-
on. So I got done telling him where it was, and he said, why don't I show you how to put it on?
Yeah.
So I went back to Portage with the track and coffin store. They had a flying service
Yep.
at summertime, but they always kept a cub on skis in the wintertime. So I got Tiny Coffin to fly me in with the toolbox and that track. And he dropped me off right beside the sled on the Bully Lake. And I said, Tiny, if I'm not back in Portage by 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, come get me because I'll be right here.
Yeah.
But I turned her upside down and It was quite a job. You had to take all the bogie wheels out, and that front drive shaft, and cog wheels out, and everything. But I
Yeah,
got
you hope you don't get in a situation where you say, "Well, I need a certain tool or whatever. I don't have it."
He told me pretty much what to take, what I needed.
Yeah, but misplace something or
Well,
whatever.
I knew there was plenty of tools at Red River Camp. I
Yeah.
had to walk back there. It was only 3
Yeah.
miles. I could go.
Only
go
3
get
miles.
some. But,
Did you?
but I got it back together anyway and over back to Portage.
Yeah.
Gee.
Did you harvest ice up there at Red River?
Yes.
Yeah, you had an ice house, and
Yes.
I know most of the sporting camps in that era.
We went in.
They harvested ice.
Usually we'd go in the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
A lot of the camps wait till March. But in March, you usually got snow and then you got
Right.
slush. And
Right. Right.
you go in early.
Right.
Right around Christmas time in those years, you'd have 1.5 foot of nice blue ice and maybe a foot or so of snow on top of it, and just clean the snow off. And
Good ice.
we'd
Yeah.
Arthur used to go in with us, and we'd cut the ice, take us a day and a half to fill the ice house.
Yeah.
Always look forward to it every year.
That'd be a fun trip.
Back
So-
in those days, it was pretty hard to make a living being
Yeah.
a guide.
Yeah.
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 I don't know.
I still do it.
You get enough clients from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, those were few and far between.
That's one week out of the year, right? Brett? Yeah. Hard to live on
Yeah,
one
when
week.
you start
and-
raising a family, that doesn't go all that far.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I had a great career as a forester.
That was for
Yeah.
7 Islands, right?
7 Islands. I was
Yeah.
with them for 36 years.
Yeah.
When did you retire?
I retired in 2004. I was 58 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
Actually,
Yeah. I was.
I was actually 58 that summer.
So about 22 years you've been.
Yeah. I was 57 when I retired.
Then after that, I guided some for Jason. And they're mostly hunters. Because in those days, all we were taking was hunters. He didn't have, wouldn't take any fishermen. The camps needed so much work that we'd spend all summer
Yeah.
working on the camps.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
you'd always have a few deer hunters come in the fall, November.
Would that have been like right after you retired?
Yes. Yep.
Late 2010 or so, and around there?
2004 to 2008 or 9. I
Okay.
spent
Yeah.
5 summers, I think, in there.
Okay.
And then the fall came. I was guide. I was also cooking for him. So I was running the kitchen and guiding and doing everything.
Arthur, when did you retire?
About 18, 19 years ago.
No kidding.
Turned
And what did you do?
62. Well, I worked in construction in the early days, and then I got into the food industry and stayed with that till
Okay.
close to retirement, till some plants started shutting down, and then I worked for MPG just at the very end for a few years. I was a safety director and ran a bagging plant
Okay.
over to Caribou.
So now Jason had mentioned up at the camps that you guys had some interesting stories going up the river, your trips up the river.
Imagine we did.
Any of now what? I mean, there's one picture there, you in a wash tub.
Yeah,
Is there a story behind that, or
Well, he was going
I-
to try to come down river.
the whole time? Get down river.
He had a little bit too much black label on him.
How'd you make out?
didn't float very well.
He went about 6 inches, and then about a foot down.
Yeah.
There was one real interesting trip that we made. It was in April, and there was a local game warden in Portage that was a good friend of mine. And he had another warden that was in at Portage Pond that was up to town that spring. And they wanted to go up fish river. So we went up, and Arthur and I and had up my canoe, and the wardens had their canoe, and we went across the ice, put in the river, and headed up. Well, we got to camp, and the wardens were having a little bit of a party. But the next morning, he wasn't feeling too good. We were going to head back down. And he said, I really don't feel like driving that canoe to Portage. So I said, well, Arthur can do that for you. So Arthur gets the canoe, and Vern gets up in the bow, and I take the other warden with me. The key to this is that they had a 5.5 horsepower motor on their canoe. I had a 7.5 on mine. So I'm going down river, and I'm ahead of them. And I get to where the mouth of Ferguson Brook comes in, and there's a big bogan there, and the ice was just moving out of that bogan, a big sheet of ice going down the river. And I just swung into the bogan and stopped. And they came along, and I pulled out in the river, throttled back, and we was going side by side. And we got down this big ice floe was ahead of us, and there was room for one canoe to get by the side. And I could see the look in his eye that he was going to make for that. And he's going to put me in the alders. But he forgot for just a minute that I had a faster motor.
Bigger motor.
The minute I realized what he was going to do, I just opened my throttle. And I shot by him, and he got caught in the wake from my canoe, and his canoe went right sideways and started to tip. And Arthur went right out of it into the river. I mean, this is April.
Yeah.
3 feet of snow in the woods.
Yeah.
And water's a little chilly.
A little chilly.
The canoe was sideways in the river. Vern was up in the bow, and the motor was cavitating because there was no one back in the engine room. So Vern gets up, and he tries to crawl back to shut the motor off. Well, the minute he got his weight back past the middle thwart, that prop kicked in, and she's going wide open. And that canoe shot right high and dry up through the fiddlehead flats. Burns splayed out across the thwart. And by this time I've got my motor stopped, and we're looking back, and Jim, the other warden, he and I were laughing so friggin' hard, and all of a sudden something clicked.
Where's Arthur?
So he got ashore and got hold of an alder and got him out. He had a lot of wool clothes on, but he was pretty wet. So we took him back over to where Vern's canoe was and got the canoe back in the water. And there was a camp just down below Hughes Brook. Bud Daggett's camp at Hughes Brook. I had a key to it. So we went to Hughes Brook and went in and got a big fire going in the stove. And Bud Daggett always left all of his old hunting clothes up there. All never took them home. So we got Arthur dried off, got him in some dry clothes, and we headed to Portage. But it was just,
Gee.
of course, back then, nobody wore life jackets.
No.
They had canoe cushions,
No.
but they weren't
No.
much good.
No.
In those days, we would go to the falls in the spring. We'd have 2 or 3 canoes.
Yeah.
And Bud always had a bunch of people at his camp. They'd have 2 or 3, 4 canoes. Every Sunday, they would come to the falls,
Yeah.
and we'd have a big dinner,
Yeah.
beef stew or something.
Oh, my
that they'd
goodness.
eat. And everybody would get in the canoe and see who could get to Portage first. And anything was fair game. If you could put somebody in the bushes, do it,
Just like a NASCAR race or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember one year we were coming down just before we got to the mouth of Ferguson, and there was 6 of us abreast in the river. I mean, we had the river pretty full. The river's not that wide. And we came around that corner where the big bogan Ferguson was, and there was 3 boats anchored in the middle of the river. People, men on their wives and their sunbonnets on, they were sitting there fishing and enjoying the nice sunny day, and all of a sudden here come 6 canoes, and there's no place for anybody to go. And I was on the right-hand side, and I was the only one that was able to get around the corner because the river turned right there, and I was on that side. Everybody else went up in the bushes, 2 of them upset.
Fred, your mother was quite a photographer, and I was going through those photos. One thing that kind of struck me was, it seemed like camp was a pretty big social event. Like there's a lot of, it looks like your father cooking, and just a lot of group meals and stuff at camp. And you think a lot of times going to the woods is kind of a solitude thing, but going through those photos, it seemed
We
Just as much of a social.
we lived there in the summertime. We'd move over. The school got out. We'd move to Portage, and we'd stay there until the day before school started in the fall.
No kidding.
And then we were there every weekend.
Big
winter.
big get-togethers and stuff.
In
Looked
the
like.
summertime, we had several neighbors, Dr. Donahue and his family. They had kids our age. And, Cobby Downing, my great uncle's camp next to ours, and all close friends, my parents. So weekends, we had the big main lodge, had the room,
Very.
and so it was kind of a congregating place for everybody on weekends.
Yeah.
Everybody'd bring food, and have a big meal, have a party.
Seemed like a good
Had an
time.
old piano there. My father would play the piano and sing. And
Yes.
Deanie Donahue would dance on the table.
So that must have been hard on you, Arthur, when your buddy left for the summer.
Well, when he left for summer, quite often I was shortly behind him.
You're
That's
right
what I
there.
was going to ask. If you get to spend some of that,
A lot of it is.
you'd spend a lot of time.
It was
in this-
easier for his mother to take care of the two of us together than try and just take care of him.
Wow.
So a lot of days I'd be going to swimming lessons, walking from Dyer Street down the swimming pool, and Fred could catch me on the sidewalk and want to know if I wanted to go to camp. And I said, "Yep." He said, "Well, let's go." And I'd go put my bathing suit in the stream up next to the swimming pool and get it wet and roll a towel up in it and go back and tell Mom Fred's taking me to Portage. I never made it to the lesson.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. It's a lot more fun when you have a buddy to do it with.
Yeah.
When you can share that experience, whether you're fishing or hunting or or just swimming in the, it's a lot better to have somebody that you can share it with. For sure.
Especially when you get to be around 80 years old and you've got all those memories.
Right. I still got the memories.
That's amazing. That's like I said before. That's the amazing part of it. It's a lifelong friendship that still going on.
Yeah.
Still going strong. There's still some chapters to be written.
I imagine. Well,
Yeah.
Well, you wrote one this fall,
And I was just thinking that, Paul.
which I don't think we got the full story on that, did we?
Yeah.
well, had a good guide. He said, "You go up there, and I'll go down here, and I'll wait, come back down." Just happened to see a real fresh track and all that. I mean, there was lots of tracks.
Yeah.
Wherever you went, there was tracks.
Right. Right.
One
Yeah.
real fresh track come down across the road. Gosh, I stopped and I looked at that. And I said, "Right down, that's just made." Pete told me to go to the end of the road. Went to the end of the road, and it wasn't much further, and turned around, walked back. And I said, "If I don't see any other tracks, I got to look at that track again."
Yeah.
I come back and looked at it. Well, I can't see Pete from where I am. And I call him Pete because I know his name is Fred, but
Right.
his father's name was Fred too.
Right,
So
you
it's
called
easier
him
for me
Pete.
to call him
Yeah.
Pete because we were kids, and it's never changed in 80
Yeah.
years.
Yep.
But anyway, I followed that track down in, and I got a bunch of younger deer. Didn't see the deer, but a lot of where they'd been milling around.
Yeah.
This deer went through it. And there's some more tracks. And then pretty soon I saw this deer up ahead of me walking to stop. There's a deer right there. Put the scope on it. I couldn't see any horns. I couldn't see anything. The way a bow was, I just couldn't see the top of his head. Didn't know what the heck it was. I kept waiting. Just all he had to do was just take a step. Just go a foot, and then I can see your head, top of the head. I had plenty of chance to shoot. I said, "Well, he's not going to stay there forever. I got to drop down on one knee or something, see if I can see the top of his head." Just about halfway down to the ground with my knee, and he folding the way he went. Well, still don't know what it is, but I said, "A fresh track." And then it wasn't not too long. He did go just maybe 1,000 yards or so. And then I saw he turned. He's coming right back towards me, maybe 30 feet from me. And I saw the horns on it. And I said, "There's a spike horn." I said, when we left, I said, "I'd shoot a spike horn. All I want to do is make some mincemeat."
Yep.
And I said, "Need that neck."
Yeah.
So he got right well, he wasn't any further away than your chair is. When he stopped
No
right
kidding.
broadside to, right beside me. I just let her go, and he dropped right there.
He tracked a deer down.
I know. I didn't realize that.
At 80 years old, he tracked his deer down. Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't want to go too far.
Yeah, well,
Well, the worst thing and the best thing that happened is I left my towing rope at the camp.
yeah, so no, you don't want to have that on you. That
Dad
means
did
you,
Dad
that
did the
means
same
you
thing
might
this
have
fall.
to take.
And where that deer was, it was uphill. Because I was going towards the river, actually, going
Yeah.
to where we got the deer. And I said, well, I didn't clean it right then. I said, I'll flag it here, and I'll go up, pick up that road, put a flag there. I'll go down and tell Pete, go get my towing rope, and I'll go back and clean the deer, and you'll see my flag.
Yep.
Pete, being a guide, had a lot better plan. He said, I'll call Jason.
That's the best plan.
Well, when we got the message to Jason, and Jason was out with Sherry, we didn't know really where they were. Pete thought he knew where they were,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the garble was breaking up from our
Yeah.
location. So we went back to the camp, and Jason was going to meet us in there. So we figured we had the head start on him. We got the rope almost back to where we wanted to go, and there's a pickup in the middle of the road parked, and old beaver flowage ahead of us. We just got to the turn, head up the hill where we'd been parked in the morning. Here's Jason coming down the hill. He'd already gone in. Him, Jerry, Sherry drug it out, had it loaded in his truck, and he pulled up beside us and said,
Here's your
all right, get in my truck, Sherry. You'll get in with Pete. We'll go take the deer back to camp. I said, that's the easiest deer I've ever shot in my
Way
life.
to do it.
Yeah.
Turned out.
I saw a picture of your father's last deer. Is there a story behind that deer?
He was in the summertime, that summer before that. He was at Portage, and it was the year I graduated from high school, and I had gone to work for J.W. Sewell Company in Old Town that summer, cruising to get some experience because I was going to go to forestry school. So anyway, Father was out mowing the lawn one day, and he was a stickler on safety around power equipment, power tools, or anything. Anytime I was in the shop, he was watching me like a hawk, whatever, if I was around on a table saw or anything, telling me to be careful. Anyway, he was out mowing the lawn, and the back wheel fell off the lawnmower. The bolt vibrated loose, came out. So he was in a hurry, so he went down, he had hold of the top of the wheel like that, lawnmower was still running. He was putting the bolt in, and something distracted him. He turned like that, or he did. His hand rolled under that, took his 3 fingers off right here. And mother wrapped him up and took him to the hospital in Pascal and got him sewed up. And he came back. That was probably in August sometime. Well, that fall, he was having a lot of trouble with that hand. And figured, well, I won't be able to hunt this fall. I won't be able to hold a rifle. So they were at camp in November. They were at Portage, and he was moaning and going deer hunting and couldn't go. Mother said, for God's sake, she said, put your hunting clothes on, take your rifle, and go up on the West Farm. So she just wanted to get him out of the camp. So anyway, he did. He walked up. West Farm was just up the road from our camp. It was a big old abandoned farm, a field up there, apple orchards. And he was walking up along the edge of the field, and this buck started to come out of the woods, and it was running right across the field. And Father had a Model 760 Remington.
Yeah.
And he fired 5 shots at that deer going across the field, and because he couldn't hold the forearm, he was just his hand under it like this, you know. But he fired 5 shots at that, and the deer disappeared on the other side of the field. So he walked over, and walked along, and all of a sudden he saw this antler sticking up out of the grass. And long long story short, he hit it all 5 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
way.
And
Dude
Yeah.
laying there dead.
Was there any point in time you knew the woods changed? Like there was a defining moment where you're like, wow, this isn't what it used to be like.
What really changed
the budworms.
then was the budworm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we had an early outbreak
Yeah.
in the 60s.
Okay.
And in those days, they were spraying with DDT.
Yes, they were.
I can remember in high school, I was out at the airport one morning during the spray season, and they had these old Navy torpedo bombers
Yeah.
they were using, rigged up for spray planes, noisier now. And I got talking with one of the pilots, and he started pumping me about where I live. And I said, well, I live here in Prescott, but we have camps on Portage where we stay. And this time of year, we're living over there. He said, the black flies must be pretty bad over there, aren't they? He made it a point to ask me specifically where the camp was. I said, you can't miss it. It's halfway up the lake in a big set of camps.
Yeah.
Maine Lodge, 4 or 5 small camps. Well, the next morning, about 4 o'clock, just coming daylight, I heard this roar coming across the lake. And I looked out, and here comes this friggin' TBM torpedo bomber across the lake. And he got about halfway across the lake, and he opened his booms. And he went over our camp. Just a cloud of DDT landed there. There wasn't a black
No
fly
black
for 5 years.
Nope. Nope.
But half of that went in the lake.
Yeah.
There was no controls over it. The one thing that the budworm did for us, it forced us to create a lot of access.
Right.
Whereas now there isn't hardly an acre that you can't get to in northern Maine within a year if you had to. But if you don't harvest those trees, Mother Nature's going to do it for you, and
Yep.
it's a cycle.
Yep.
But we don't have those over mature forests anymore.
Right.
It's all,
Boy, we
it's
don't.
It's a very young forest,
Yeah.
and so the budworm doesn't really have the amount of food available to it that
Yeah.
it did back 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a misnomer, the spruce budworm, because its primary food is balsam fir.
Right.
It's not spruce.
All right.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that the fir buds pop earlier than the spruce does, about 2 or 3 weeks earlier than the spruce does. And that coincides with the feeding stage of the budworm. So by the time the spruce needles, the spruce buds start to break and they start to grow, the budworm has already gone into its next cycle. It's not in a feeding cycle anymore. So,
Yeah. Turns into a moth, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. Yeah.
so
Well, shoot.
What do you say, Mr. Paul?
Yeah, we appreciate you guys coming over.
Oh, yeah.
oh,
It was
enjoyed
great.
it.
Yeah.
Great conversation. Had a great time at Chandler Lake camps, and like I appreciate you letting me use those photos because
Oh,
that
no problem.
really, that your mother did that at that point in time. That's something a lot of people
I've read
just
a
didn't
lot of
document.
I've read a lot of the comments on those videos.
Yeah,
People want more.
yeah, that's something that hits home with a lot of people. I mean, it's well when you had to be a good woodsman.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it wasn't about shooting great big deer every year or catching a pile of fish every time you went out.
Yeah.
It was like going through those photos. There's just so much like joy and
As
experience.
you can see from a lot of those photos, the concept of catch and release really hadn't caught
No.
on yet.
That was the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, there's just so many. Yeah,
But nothing went to waste.
no.
No, but you
Oh,
know,
really?
like I say, we take it for granted now because you can drive anywhere. You can You can drive anywhere now and get anywhere, but back in that day, you either walked or poled or rowed a canoe up a river, or it was not the same way.
Kind of envious because you can kind of just disappear for a while. No one can get a hold of you. Back then, when they say like a picture's worth 1,000 words, you look at those pictures and at least mine does, just kind of wanders on.
Yeah.
What was going on? What was?
Well, I have to say you do a great job.
Yes, you do.
Together.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.